identical since the day that it was opened to world commerce. The number of miles saved between New York and San Francisco by using the Panama Canal is a little short of 8,000 miles. All the operations that you're now viewing, nothing has been changed in almost a half a century.
The Stars and Stripes have flown unchallenged over the Panama Canal for the last half century. It is true, little if anything has changed here. But around the canal, the world has been changing. And here in the Republic of Panama, a country whose friendship we have taken for granted since its birth, the Panama Canal has now become a danger zone.
Panama, Panama, my loving Panama. Panama, Panama, old Panama, breaking point of the Americas, the land divided and the world united. Sam, Uncle Sam, he wants to keep the canal. If it's a question of sovereignty, he won't recognize Panamanian nationality. The land divided and the world united.
In Panama, each day during May and December, there is a darkness at noon as the clouds blacken the sky. The silent people wait for the storm that is almost inevitable. And at this moment in history in Panama, another kind of storm is also threatening. A little over a year ago, in November 1959, on the anniversary of Panama's independence, thousands of Panamanians demonstrated against the United States and tried to force their way into the canal zone. The leader of the mob, member of Panama's Chamber of Deputies, Aquilino Boyd.
The Panamanians felt that they should go to the canal zone on November the 3rd, 1959, because that was a way of showing the world that we are sovereigns in that part of our territory. And we wanted to bring the Panamanian flag over there as a proof of our sovereignty. And the way that we were received there, but a general by the name Potter, it was outrageous.
It had been bruited around for quite a while that there would be disturbances on November 3rd. Various groups there, some of them communist-inspired, had said they were going to march into the canal zone. They attempted to do it, and under the law, and I believe in the law, I was required to stop them. We tried to do it with the police at first, without any show of arms. But finally, when the police were overrun and about 20% of them were in the hospital, why, we had to call out the troops.
The governor gave the order on the 3rd of November. The governor gave the order on the 3rd of November. The army was given full command, meaning to stop the demonstration by the border. They put up a sign, Panamanian don't cross the borderline. Although they put up the sign, Panamanians still cross the borderline. And they're singing, Viva Panama, soberana en la zona del canal. Oh, oh, Viva Panama, soberana en la zona del canal. 1959, the 3rd of November, a riot took place in Panama. The citizens were not mystified. It was led by Deputy Aquilino Boyd. When they went up 4th of July Avenue, American Greeks, Panamanians were through. The soldiers with their bayonets, throwing boom, boom. bullet and tear gas. The governor gave the order on the 3rd of November. William Potter gave the order on the 3rd of November. The army was given full command, meaning to stop the demonstration by the border. They put up a sign, Panamanian, don't cross the borderline. Although they put up the sign, Panamanians still cross the borderline and are singing, Viva Panama, soberana en la zona del canal. Viva Panama, soberana en la zona del canal.
General Potter gave the Panamanians the impression that he has cucarachas in his head because the way he acted and his reaction were very much unfavorable to the United States and to the government that he represents.
Well, I'm not sure as to the proper location of the cucarachas. That would be a subject of some discussion. Aquilino Boyd, who I know quite well, is a fine young man, fine appearing, and so on and so forth. He is a politico in Panama. He's one of the 57 deputies. I am sometimes suspicious of the statements of politicians, as are most people.
A group of patriots that went there were received by the United States Army with fixed bayonets, with bird shots, with hooves, with clubs, with tear gas. And the Panamanian people were very fond of the United States Army, the army that has fought twice for democracy. The heroes of Guadalcanal and Okinawa were certainly not at their best part when this man by the name Potter called on them to put up that show that was the disgrace of the relations of the United States with Panama.
The aftermath of riot brought increased tension and division to Panama. General Potter ordered the construction of a fence along a section of the canal zone. It stretched along the borderline with Panama, where no physical barrier had existed before, and it became a symbol, not only of distrust between the United States and the people of Panama, but also of a changing mood in Latin America. In January 1959, when Fidel Castro came to power in Cuba, no one realized that before the year was out, the emotions of revolution and inflamed nationalism would have infected all of Central and South America. Certainly few would have believed it possible for anti-American riots to be directed against the Panama Canal, the heart of our strategic position in Latin America. Why did these riots occur? What do they portend for the future? Will there be further riots? How secure is the Panama Canal? What lessons can we learn from these events in Panama? These questions are the subject of our NBC white paper. The Republic of Panama is located at the crossroads of the hemisphere. It links North and South America and divides the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It is the bridge between the Caribbean, an extension of the Atlantic on the north, and the Pacific on the south. And the American-built Panama Canal, 50 miles long, slices Panama in half. The canal zone extends roughly 5 miles on either side of the canal. And it is there, at the 9th parallel, that the American flag flies, dividing a sovereign nation in two. This is the Panama Canal, a man-made strait, a funnel for ships moving from one ocean to the other. From 2,000 feet up, you can look out at the two oceans at once. From the Atlantic in the foreground, through Gatun Lake, then Gaillard Cut, to the Pacific in the distance. The seat of American government in the canal zone and the present governor, General W.A. Carter, United States Army Corps of Engineers.
This canal, of course, is the responsibility of the government of the United States. It was built by the United States. It's been operated as a public utility for world shipping ever since its inception. I can see the ships come through here, and every time they blow the whistle, it means more money in the till. The strategic value of the canal is as great now as it ever was. The chief user, much to everyone's surprise, is the United States. About 70% of the traffic through the canal in a year either is going to the United States or from the United States. It goes, of course, to all the ports in the world. However, the canal is of vital importance to the countries in Central and South America, particularly those countries on the west coast of South America. For example, I believe the figures are that Peru and Chile, about 70 to 80% of their entire export and import goes through this canal. It makes no profit. It runs at no cost to the United States. The only requirement for a ship coming through this canal is that she pay her money for her tolls in cash before we put a pilot aboard. Any ship of any nation that comes here goes through the canal. Of our 14,000 employees, about 10,000 are Panamanian citizens. But as long as it's the responsibility of the United States government to provide this world utility for the transportation of the world, I personally believe that the United States must continue to operate the canal.
The fact that we have always operated and owned the canal since it opened in 1914 is something Americans have taken for granted. And the story of the canal's construction is an epic chapter in American history. A graveyard of equipment remained as evidence of those who tried before us and failed. Ferdinand de Lesseps, the Frenchman who built Suez, met with ruin and heartbreak when 22,000 men died during his attempt. When the Americans began in 1904, they were confronted with a section of the world's worst jungle. The legend among diplomats at this time in Panama was that each of their predecessors was shipped home in a coffin. For Panama was a sinkhole of tropical fevers. They called it the white man's grave. Colonel William Gorgas set out to eliminate the dread yellow fever. Each mosquito killed by his Gorgas gangs, as they were called, cost the United States an estimated $10. But his work saved 70,000 lives. Colonel George Washington Goethals, appointed by Theodore Roosevelt to take command of construction, went down the line to inspect the work every morning. And under his charge, new world records were set for excavation. An old-timer recalls some of his memories of those early days.
Boys from the canal used to go in on Saturday nights for the regular high time at the cantinas and other spots of interest in the city, but I wouldn't say that it was very wild. It always had a charm for me because it was something so different than I had ever encountered in my life before. Roosevelt, at that time, set the precedent of a president leaving the United States territory and coming into a foreign country. Said when he was here that he came for a first-hand look at how things were going. While he was here, he took great delight in slipping away from the official crowd that had him in tow and was found somewhere else all of a sudden. They didn't know just how he got there, but he got there, and usually in conversation with some employee of some division.
In August of 1914, after 40,000 men had labored for 10 years, the oceans were finally to be joined at Gamboa.
Well, of course, a great deal of excitement prevailed at Gamboa, where the dike was to be blown up. The explosion came from President Wilson pressing a button on his desk in Washington. It was quite a thing to see that much material fly into the air and see that great sweep of water come in and fill up the cut. I think everyone that saw that dam blow up received a great thrill from the sight.
The thrill and the excitement of that opening day, August 15th, 1914, was reported round the world. America boasted its greatest achievement, and our growing military, economic, and political might were symbolized in the American flag that flew over it. But the Panamanians prefer to emphasize another side of the story.
Long live Panama, which was discovered by Vasco Núñez de Balboa.
The Spanish explorer Balboa had built a city in Panama in 1501, and the existence of the Camino Real, the royal road across the isthmus, represented a proud Spanish tradition that predated our own. In fact, Simón Bolívar in 1826 had wanted Panama to be the capital of the Americas. In 57 years, 53 rebellions were fought by Panamanians trying to free themselves from Colombia. Theodore Roosevelt boasted, "I took the isthmus," when he helped create the country of Panama in 1903, using U.S. military might to back their cause of independence. A treaty was rushed through, granting the United States the right to build a canal, but Panamanians claim the treaty gave them few benefits. The Canal Administration brought in 45,000 laborers from the West Indies to do the heavy work under American supervision. This influx of English-speaking Negroes created problems of assimilation that still exist and cause resentment even today. The Americans built a comfortable colony for themselves, while shanty towns sprang up for the other workers, which still remain. The most bitter Panamanian complaint was against payroll practices, the double standard set by the so-called gold and silver rolls. The gold roll, which meant high pay for Americans. The silver roll for the others, including native Panamanians, meant a tropical wage scale and lower rates even for comparable work. When the Americans arrived, the Panamanians say they set a social standard reminiscent of the British in colonial India. Here then was the Panama Canal, a vital strategic, military, and economic resource of the United States, which also benefits Panama to the tune of $63 million annually, directly and indirectly, 1/6 of their national income. But the Panamanians feel they should have larger economic benefits from the canal, which they consider their greatest national resource. The historical resentments of Panamanians toward Americans were brought into focus by the question of whose flag should fly over the Panama Canal. According to the Treaty of 1903 between the United States and Panama, the United States is granted rights in perpetuity to act as if it were sovereign in the canal zone. The vague phrase, "as if it were sovereign," is interpreted by this country and most experts on international law as giving the United States full rights in the zone. It is not so interpreted by the Panamanians. Former Panamanian President Dr. Armodio Arias, considered by many the most powerful man in Panama, talks to NBC News reporter Harry Rasky.
I may tell you that the Treaty of 1903, when the United States officials took charge of the canal zone, they did not raise the American flag. Only the Panamanian flag was raised. And in 1906, during an investigation in the Senate of the United States, the first governor of the Panama Canal, General Davis, admitted that the flag of the United States was not being raised in the canal zone, and that only the Panama flag, and that there were doubts in his mind whether the United States had rights to have the flag in the canal zone. Subsequently, after 1906, the United States started to put up the flag and eliminate the Panamanian flag. Since then, that has been a source of resentment on the part of the Panamanian people.
Representative Daniel Flood of Pennsylvania, who has long had an interest in Panama.
The juridical position of the United States of America is clear. Once you have established a constitutional position, and the position of the United States of America in the canal zone is a constitutional position. the result of a treaty with the Republic of Panama, ratified by the Senate of the United States. Therefore, under our Constitution, that treaty becomes the law of the land. The canal zone is an extension of the coastline of the United States of America.
Just opposite Panama City, the capital of Panama, and separated from it by only a street, an American town has been built in the canal zone, Balboa. Its residents, United States citizens, have definite views about their rights and the place in which they live.
Do you, as a resident here, feel that this is part of the United States?
I don't feel that it's a part of the United States, but I do feel that it is land over which the United States has acquired complete jurisdictional rights in perpetuity, and that the United States can do with the place what it pleases so long as it does it within the bounds of the treaties that exist between Panama and the United States government.
What the Canal Zone residents have done is to recreate a tiny slice of America on the 9th parallel. The morning paper is the Panama American, in English. The banks are American, and so are the stamps. Movies and television shows are a little late in coming, but 100% American. The supermarkets have attractively low prices, which has been a source of resentment to those who live across the road in the Republic of Panama, where prices for the same goods are high. The central eating place along the main street, called a clubhouse, once maintained a color line. It no longer does, but Panamanians are still critical of the attitudes of U.S. citizens in the zone.
Well, we call them Sonians, more or less, and I believe they are different kind of Americans because the real Americans that come here after 1 or 2 or 3 months, they live in the canal zone, they think they're better off than everybody else, and really we don't believe so. In the United States, they're very hospitable. Here, they're stubborn, they're snob, and they don't like to mix with the Latin American people.
The Panamanians point to the Tivoli Hotel as an example of American aloofness in the canal zone. Some of the permanent guests say they haven't stepped into the Republic of Panama in years. The Republic of Panama is just across the street. For all the mixing that goes on, says one American, that street might as well be the Grand Canyon. At the schools in Balboa and other zone towns, the day always begins the same.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
They pledge allegiance to the country many have never seen, descendants of the men who once dug the canal.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My country, tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my heart is high, land rock hill is dry, from every mountain side, let freedom ring. Ay cantamos por ti la victoria, en el campo feliz el unión.
Across the road in Panama, only a stone's throw away, Panamanian children begin their day the same way, singing their national anthem, but in a different setting. The name of the slum is Puente del Rey, which translates Bridge of the King. Here, too, are descendants of the canal diggers. The setting is Panama, but this could just as easily be Caracas, Venezuela, or Rio, Tegucigalpa, Lima, Santiago, Havana. For Panama, in its basic internal problems, is almost indistinguishable from any other Latin land. For most Latin Americans, there is only one hope for breaking the circle of poverty, the government lottery. In Panama, it begins promptly at 11 a.m. Sunday morning and is all over a few minutes later. As in all Latin America, there is heavy unemployment. This is accentuated by a system of patronage rather than a constant civil service. When the administration changes, all government jobs also change, and a man must wait his turn. The current president, in office only a few months, has started regular days of audience with the unemployed. Weeks of waiting, a Latin learns to wait, may lead to a personal interview and perhaps a job. President Chiari, a millionaire but considered a liberal, talks to a lucky few, but knows there is not enough work to go around.
Pues sí, entonces se la dejamos ya el papel de la guía de la cuestión de la carrera administrativa. Sí, a don Marco. O sea, él dijo que iba a ver qué te dijo.
Like all Latin countries, Panama suffers not only from urban poverty, but also from underdevelopment in the rural areas, where over half the population lives. The interior, potentially rich, is almost without roads. The wheel and even the plow are strangers here. The machete is the chief farm implement, frequently the only one. Most of the farmers are squatters, contributing nothing to the national economy and barely able to survive themselves. The chief industry, as in most Central and South American countries, is owned by North Americans. In Panama, the proprietor of the largest banana plantation in Central America is the Chiriquí Land Company, a part of the United Fruit Company. It is the largest private landowner in the country, employing 11,000 workers, most of them descendants of the Indians from the hills. In the past, much criticism had been directed against the company for the working conditions of its Panamanian employees. But today, conditions are much improved. The workers earn more and live better than laborers outside the plantation, even though they are crowded 6 families to 6 rooms, all sharing a common kitchen. The company provides a free school for the children of employees and a clinic with free hospitalization for those making less than $100 a month. There is also a company store, but its goods are priced too high for most of the laborers. Even though time has brought changes for the better, the fact that a United States concern is still the largest private employer in Panama is a continuing source of irritation, and many Panamanians still refer to the Chiriquí Land Company as El Pulpo, the octopus. President Chiari explains why there has been a growth of anti-Americanism.